Shown off at COD Next on August 28th, 2024, Liberty Falls is Black Ops 6's second on-disc experience, focusing on a quaint town in West Virginia that has been ravaged by the Dark Ether. Unfortunately, the map was almost immediately panned by the community, with criticism directed towards atmosphere, HUD elements, and general gameplay. So now, a month past release, there's no way that Liberty Falls has come around, and surely it's a dog shit map, not worth remembering, right? Right? So with that intro over, you may be thinking, Sam, why are you talking about Liberty Falls over Terminus? And to be honest, it's because I really fucking dig Liberty Falls, man. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Since this is a new game, I want to take this intro portion to go over how Black Ops 6 changes the zombie formula once again, and go in depth on how the mode has evolved from Cold War, Vanguard Zombies, and MWZ. To kick this off, let's start with your pre-game setup. Upon opening Black Ops 6 Zombies as your operator walks through the endless void, you can tab over to the loadout screen, where as opposed to having multiple classes like in Cold War and Vanguard, you are allocated one loadout slot, which includes your primary weapon, a dedicated melee, field upgrade, lethal and tactical equipment, and the glorious return of Gobblegums. Last seen in Black Ops 3, Gobblegums in this game function just a tad differently. Similarly to Black Ops 3, you create Gobblegum packs that feature 5 slots for you to equip gums of different rarities and uses. These gums can then be obtained from one of several Gobblegum machines dotted around the map. The first major difference from Black Ops 3's gums can be seen immediately in that now you can hold 3 at a time in a match, and stack your own effects on top of each other. Gone are the days of having to trade a half-used shopping free for a perkaholic, and here to stay is popping profit sharing, temporal gift, and double points all on your own to help your team out. On top of that, earning Gobblegums is even easier now. Similar to the Ethereum crystals from Cold War, every round gives the player a small chance to earn a number of Gobblegums from 1 to 3. By removing Liquid Divinium, it gives the players a brand new way to experience Gobblegums while skipping over the downright gambling that Black Ops 3 had. Now, back to the loadout menu. After reaching player level 11, gamers will notice a new menu called Augments. This is a new system, replacing the Ethereum crystal-based upgrade system of Cold War. Essentially, each item has 3 major and 3 minor augments, which are earned by selecting a specific item to research and earning XP in-game to progress through the tiers. The entire process emphasizes mixing and matching as opposed to being a permanent upgrade system like Cold War. The upgrades all emphasize different aspects of the item's abilities, so let's talk about the new field upgrade, Dark Flare, for example. Its major augments include Extension, which increases the length that the Dark Flare beam is active, Supernova, which switches its function to be a ball that slowly moves through the arena, damaging anything in its path, and the final major augment, Dark Pact, which revives players when in contact with the beam. Now, you combine these with the minor augments like Broad Beam, which makes the size of the beam significantly larger, Heavy Shadow to slow down enemies that are in contact with the laser piss, or Extra Charge to carry an additional activation of Dark Flare. And you're ready to drop the undead like a bad habit. The augments are an incredibly well thought out innovation that expands on Cold War's upgrade system in an intuitive way that can always be changed around based on what you need. The final thing to take note of before we move on to gameplay changes is your character selection. While Treyarch maintains the option to choose operators, Black Ops 6 heralds the return of a playable crew. And while they won't be as significant in Liberty Falls as they are fighting the hordes on Terminus Island, Weaver, Gray, Carver, and Maya's inclusion breathes some much-needed life into every match and is an incredibly welcomed feature. Now that we've covered the out-of-game loop, let's talk about how this game changes the core fundamentals. To start off, a lot of the features from Cold War do return. Dynamic wall buys, the Rampage Inducer, the crafting table, triple tier Pack-a-Punch, weapon rarity, and exfil all make their way back to the game. The game also reintroduces salvage, but this time around there is no rare salvage, which means players are only dealing with 2 types of currencies, essence and salvage. On top of that, the salvage pickups themselves are individualized for every player, so now there's no more instances of one player vacuuming up all the drops on the ground when you are in desperate need of an upgrade. With salvage, the player can venture to the arsenal station, Replacing Ivan the Mannequin is this sentient Arlie Ermy knockoff.
Fuck my life! Fall into formation and pound face!
Who gives the players access to both weapon rarity tiers as well as ammo mods, which have been separated from the Pack-a-Punch. While this sounds similar to Cold War, a massive difference is that you can buy upgrades in sequential order, or if you're feeling really brave, you can just hoard salvage until you hit the necessary 9,000 to jump from gray rarity straight up to legendary. Armor also makes a return, but this time around, not only do you have to manually plate up like an MWZ, the vests themselves have to be purchased with points. At the start of a match, players load in with 1 armor plate standard, but can increase this to 2 and 3 armor plates using their respective wall buys. With Tier 2 armor costing 4,000 points, and Tier 3 costing 14,000, should the player choose to buy Tier 2 armor first, it will remove that 4,000 cost from the Tier 3 vest, but the option remains to jump straight from Tier 1 to 3 should the player choose to do so. Probably my favorite new gameplay addition in Black Ops 6 is the global change of Omni movement. This feature gives players full control over their movement, being able to sprint, slide, and dive in any direction at any time. This is such an incredibly well-developed feature for zombies, because there's no better feeling than being able to slide to avoid a mangler cannon shot, or dive backwards down a flight of stairs with PhD Flopper in order to kill everything below you. Every movement is given so much more purpose and an additional flair that previous games were missing. One of the last few gameplay things to mention, the new goodies this game brings along. Now, I already touched on the brand new field upgrade, Dark Flare, but Black Ops 6 brings along a new ammo mod, a new perk, and 2 new score streaks, along with a slew of new lethal and tactical equipment. So, let's start with the new perk, Melee Macchiato. Available on both Terminus and Liberty Falls through its brand new perk machine, or the Der Wunderfizz machine, which turns on after round 25 has been reached, this perk aims to buff the new dedicated melee slot, as well as your standard melee attack. Melee Macchiato replaces your gun butt with an emphasized punch that can send zombies flying, and, with the right augment setup, can make going melee only a walk in the park. The game features 8 total perks at the moment, the aforementioned Melee Macchiato, on top of Juggernog, Speed Cola, Quick Revive, Stamina Up, Elemental Pop, Deadshot Daiquiri, and PhD Flopper. Moving on to the new ammo mod, Shadow Rift, when equipped, affected zombies will be teleported into the sky and drop to their death in an incredibly satisfying animation. Before moving on to our new score streaks, I have to mention the fact that craftable self-revives return, this time with a limit to make downing and solo play more dire. Now back to score streaks. While some of Cold War's arsenal returns, namely the Chopper Gunner, the Artillery Strike, renamed the LDBR, the Cruise Missile, now the classic Hellstorm, the Sentry Gun, and the Arc XD, Black Ops 6 brings us the Mutant Injection and the Mangler Cannon. The Mangler Cannon is quite self-explanatory, being able to be crafted for 1250 salvage or retrieved if the player can successfully shoot off a Mangler's arm. The player is given 3 incredibly powerful shots that can penetrate an entire horde. And, arguably the best for last, the Mutant Injection. This score streak, available for 2500 salvage, gives the players the chance to become the Mangler himself. In a similar vein to the Juggernaut in MWZ, the player is made invincible and a straight tank on the battlefield. You can shoot the Mangler's blast, swipe using his sickles, and use your sheer weight to ram through hordes of zombies. You don't know satisfaction until you've run into a horde of zombies, activate the Mutant Injection, and go nutso ballistic. Now, I just have to point out, someone at Treyarch has gotta love the Manglers, because 2 Mangler-themed score streaks? Really? Anyways, this is a thing that I've been waiting to talk about, the SAM trials. After opening up Pack-a-Punch on both maps, occasionally an objective marker will show up, alerting you and your team to a SAM trial, which is the replacement for the trial machine from Cold War. Should you activate the machine, a random trial will begin from the pool of objectives, and you and your team can contribute to earn higher tier rewards. All of which are individualized, might I add. These objectives can range from using nearby traps to kill zombies, holding a location, to using a granted score streak/perk to earn kills. This greatly excites the pace of your match, as you can band together to complete objectives and fast-track certain aspects of your progression. All the while, a robotic, sassy Julie Nathanson barks orders at you. I'll dive more into that aspect later, but just know that this is such a fantastic change for the trial system. The for realsies final thing to mention is the return of the intel system. In a similar fashion to Cold War, there are radios, documents, and artifacts, which this time around flesh out the story of the maps themselves as opposed to being used to convey larger plot elements. Well, now that you're equipped with the necessary knowledge to begin playing Black Ops 6, let's get this started, shall we? It's nice to be back in standard form for me, since it's been like 2 years? Anyways, let's begin where the map begins, the intro cutscene. While I'll delve into the story beats later, it's so nice to see these return. The Liberty Falls cutscene reintroduces us to director Eddie Richtofen by showing us his family. Just kidding, they're dead as hell, and he's just having a nightmare. When loaded into the match, you start on the roof of the Pump and Pay gas station and are introduced to Project Janus's Chief of Security, John Blanchard, who acts as the radio handler for this map. You take on the role of a Janus response team, here to try and rescue any and all survivors. Immediately after jumping off the roof, you are shown just one of the many reasons why this map is favored over Terminus. Every area is fucking massive, like your mom. But it equates to having more than enough room to maneuver and easily evade zombies should you decide to train. Taking a page out of literally any zombies map in history, this map has 2 separate lanes to go down, both of which eventually lead up to the church. Going down the left path will take players through the Liberty Lanes bowling alley, while the right path leads through Ollie's Comics and Washington Avenue. After reaching the church, you'll realize it has been overtaken by the Dark Ether, and upon opening the door, players can slip between dimensions and gain access to the Machine of the Angels. With the main map progression out of the way, this leads perfectly to my first point, the fast and easy setup for this map. While Zombies is somewhat synonymous with tedious, drawn-out setups, Liberty Falls skips all of this by taking the player through the entire map and rewarding them with Pack-a-Punch. And while the map isn't particularly big, the church at the top of the hill and the gas station and spawn both have zip lines that connect to the top of the bank, known as the Alamo, which, if you're a lazy ass like me, is super helpful for map flow and making sure the action never slows down. Despite the fact the map is completely wide open, with more than enough room for each player to train around and not bother one another, that's not to say that there isn't spots to hold out as well. The aforementioned Alamo, the starting roof, and should you choose to leave a couple of doors closed, the space just outside the bowling alley are all perfect holdout spots to hunker down and slay the undead. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why I love Liberty Falls, starting with the overall vibe of the map. While this map isn't perfect in this aspect, Liberty Falls definitely nails the small town feeling. Blanchard's comments on his favorite scientists,
Oh no, Dr. Pelletier. My favorite egghead. Not just book smart, but street smart.
and the specific on-theme names for the buildings, paired with the unique zombie models like the goth zombie, the sheriff, and the redneck-looking zombie, all work in tandem to emphasize the aesthetic, and I can't help but love it. Zombies hasn't exactly had a lot of urban environments like this, but seeing as how Treyarch actually based some parts of the map, like the church, off of Harper's Ferry in West Virginia, the attention to detail is incredible. From there, we'll jump into the Wonder Weapon, the Thrustodyne Model 23, or as many of us lovingly know it, the jet gun. The brainchild of a World War II vet turned moonshiner and a Janus scientist, the jet gun in the Dark Ether story is cobbled together from an old distillery kit. While many will remember the jet gun for taking a million years to build and 2 seconds to break, in Liberty Falls, it's been given a total makeover, with infinite sucking potential and a small cooldown should the jet gun's ammo run out. It also features an alt fire when holding left trigger, or your console equivalent, which will expend all ammo in a big explosion, wiping just about every zombie in the vicinity clear off the field. In a similar vein to Cold War, there are multiple ways to obtain this wonder weapon, including its buildable quest, the mystery box, and getting it from the vault. Whoa, hold up there for just a second. This is post-editing Sam here, just to say, you can't get the jet gun from the bank vault. I don't know why I said that. I think I was just confusing it with the ray gun, but just pretend that I didn't just say that, and you can only get it from the box and its buildable quest. Okay, back to the video, which gives every player the chance to use the fun thing. With strong waffle weapons comes strong enemies, and while Liberty Falls isn't perfect in this area, there are some really good enemies here. New to Black Ops 6 are the vermin enemies. Taking a page out of Resident Evil 4's book, these plugga-like spiders replace the hound enemy type. They crawl around on the walls and can leap at the players just like the tigers from 9. Joining them are regular zombies, light armor zombies, Not You, or You, and the Abomination, shrunken down from his most recent appearance in MWZ. The returning enemies maintain their properties from Cold War, meaning if you remember how to deal with them in that game, you'll breeze right through them in this one. An added bonus for abominations is that, similar to their enlarged counterparts, when they use their laser beam attack, they are just as vulnerable as when only one of their heads is open, meaning you have an incredibly good chance to put some damage in. Before we move on from high damaging things, it'd be silly not to mention the traps in this map, which are baller as hell. In a serious step up from Cold War's traps, not only are they more unique and feel better integrated into the map, they kick ass on top of that. Liberty Falls features 2 traps: the Dark Ether Field Generator, which can be found in the spawn room and on Washington Avenue, and the Etherella trap. Ripped straight out of the pages of her eponymous comic book, Etherella stands tall in Ollie's comic shop, and when activated, shoots her laser beams towards any zombie unfortunate enough to waltz into the comic shop. But beware, as she can just as easily trim you down as well.
Bring me a pina colada with an umbrella, and I might spare you.
Before we move on to the main quest and story of this map, Liberty Falls is packed full of side quests, and just in general, this is the one place that Black Ops 6 improves on tenfold from Cold War. I'll be splitting this into 2 parts, the super useful ones, and the ones that aren't quite as useful, but still nice to be included. Starting off with the Zombie Head Easter Egg, which grants players Essence, Salvage, Score Streaks, and a guaranteed Ether Tool. Unique ways to drop each of the core power-ups by shooting shrunken down versions of them scattered around the map. A Mr. Peaks-inspired bowling Easter egg, which pits players against each other to see who can earn the highest score. A Bank Vault Easter egg, which sees players scouring the map for the 3 digits to unlock the vault and use keys dropped from special enemies to earn random rewards. A free Deadshot Easter egg outside the cemetery, and probably my favorite of them all, the ability to become Etherella. After finding 9 Etherella figurines around the map, the player who sucks up the last one with the jet gun will morph into the star-studded hero, and be able to run around as her for 2 minutes with her laser vision constantly burning in any direction you face. Should you want to upgrade Etherella and earn a quick achievement, players can buy the trap in Ollie's comics and gain a speed boost to really make the most of their time as the superheroine. Moving on to the smaller Easter eggs, these include a small rave dance right outside spawn, a fire trap in the church, dig piles that can be searched using a shovel dislodged with ordnance of any kind, a blood pool Easter egg which involves throwing Semtexes into a pool out of bounds on a vermin round to earn rewards that increase in value the more times you do it, and finally a rapid round, having a mangler blow up these cars to get randomized loot, a vending machine that can be hit every round or completely destroyed using melee macchiato for random loot, and finally the pool table in the bowling alley, which when shot drops the players 100 essence. Woo! That was a lot of stuff. But all of these small things give the map flair and bonuses to aid the player in whatever they're trying to do. Now we can finally get into the story and main quest for this map. Taking place 6 years after the events of Cold War Zombies finale, Liberty Falls begins with director Eddie Richtofen having another reoccurring nightmare of his family burning alive, which, based on intel from Cold War, was probably thanks to Weaver, so thanks for that, dickhead. Anyways, as Richtofen snaps back to reality, he is alerted to a dimensional breach occurring in the lab. As Janus scientists get captured left and right, he tells them to bunker down and that he will handle Sam himself. Eddie grabs his trusty Wunderwaffe DG2, just as the Founding Fathers intended, and moves throughout the facility, introducing the players to John Blanchard, who Richtofen asks to call in response teams to save the city. As Richtofen makes his way to the lower levels, he is attacked in the elevator by Sam. Or Sam. It's kinda unclear, but as he disappears into the dark ether, the camera pans slowly to show GLaDOS. Sorry, I mean the Sam AI. When our team arrives on the scene, Blanchard is holed up in the mansion and instructs them to find any scientists left alive in the town. As they move throughout the remnants of Liberty Falls, Dr. Pelletier and Malene are both found dead. To begin the Easter egg proper, players must interact with the simultaneous dimensional gateway machine off to the right side of the church, and it will activate a small dialogue between you and Dr. Pericles Panos, the last Janus scientist who has found himself trapped within the dark ether. Panos instructs the team that they must construct the LTG, a device that Janus created in order to try and stem the outbreak. At this point, players must build the jet gun, a device built by Panos and his apparent best buddy in town, Tommy Joe, a moonshiner. After retrieving both the jet gun and the LTG parts, it can be crafted at the Alamo and placed at one of 2 locations, the cemetery or near the spawn room. Panos will then direct the team to pick up a canister from the SDG to capture the necessary essence to power the device. After a small defense objective, a portal will open and out comes an HVT. Panos and Blanchard together will harp on the team to weaken the creature. Once weak enough, Players can place the canister in the Dark Ether field generator and lure the HVT in it so that way its essence can be sucked into the canister. After that, the team must carry it back to the SDG, and Panos will mention how another must be obtained. Using the Strauss counter, named after the lovable bastard Dr. Strauss himself, the team is led to 3 projectors that must be aligned to the right frequency in order to progress. When that is achieved, repeating the previous steps will give the team access to the last canister, and once reunited with the SDG will allow entrance to the final encounter. Here, the team is faced with 3 waves of increasing difficulty, including the reappearance of the HVT Mangler and Abomination from the previous steps. Once all enemies are vanquished and the mini soul box is filled, all players will down and the cutscene begins. Panos levitates off of the balcony, and as Blanchard demands an explanation as to what's happening, Panos switches bodies with us, proclaiming, "Goodbye, Dark Ether," and leaving our team trapped in his place. What I love about this Easter egg is ultimately that it's a quick, easy affair that doesn't overstay its welcome and ends with just the right amount of difficulty to make it fun for a first completion. Many will prefer that maps end with a boss fight, but it's my belief that if you're able to have a quest with good pacing, that it crescendos and ends off on a difficult section to complete that feels as satisfying as beating a boss, then you have succeeded in making a fun main quest. On top of that, with the lack of a main cast, the quest is pinned together by 2 incredibly interesting characters, John Blanchard and Dr. Panos. Since Blanchard grew up in Liberty Falls, you get a real sense of his despair as we walk through the town and come to the realization that the organization he works for is responsible for all of this. And Panos, while not having much screen time, is an incredibly eerie character. If you decide to stay in the church after activating the SDG, you can hear his ramblings, talking about how he doesn't hate him, and how he will stay true to his promise to you should he escape. Since we're so early in Black Ops 6's life cycle, it's unclear who he's talking to, but the mystery is intoxicating, and I can't wait to see where this little gremlin heads next. If it's mystery you're after, however, it doesn't just stop there. Since the intel's focus has been shifted to world building for the map itself, players can get a really good sense of how tight-knit the community was and have a look into how Janus sunk its dirty teeth into the town. Perhaps the most interesting revelation comes from 3 separate radios: Quantum Mechanical Failure, Conspiracy Theorist, and One Lit Match. These radios feature the voices of Pelletier, Malene, and Panos respectively, and highlight how teams within Janus had become wary of Director Richtofen, how his erratic nature led to decision-making that cost the town their lives. There's also teases to Project Janus's relationship with the French Syndicate, which will be explored further in our newest map, Citadel des Morts. The last thing I want to mention before I move on from the Easter egg talk is the projector step. Now, I'm going to be real honest. At first, I hated it. It was confusing and seemed way too RNG based to be fun and slowed down the pace of the quest. But after learning how to do it, it's such a fun, simple thing that I just wanted to include how to solve it here as well, so anyone else who's struggling with it can see how it's completed. So, after picking up the Strauss counter, you must approach the projector, and while holding it out, look at the color of the phone screen. Now, using this diagram, you can change the colors on the projectors easy and move on to the next step. This isn't a huge thing, but in an Easter egg like Liberty Falls that doesn't have much going on, it's a fun little puzzle. Before we move on to the parts of this map that I don't think work, I'd like to welcome you to a new section I like to call fucking cool things that Black Ops 6 does that isn't necessarily big enough to get its own section, but still deserves to be mentioned. Title pending. We're gonna go kind of rapid for this one, so let's begin with Black Ops 6's increase in difficulty. Now, all it takes is one look at my channel to show that I loved Cold War zombies, but it's so good to have difficult zombies again. Although the balance isn't in a perfect spot, as I'll get into, the fact that we are back to there being consequences to dying, and losing a game is actually an option is fantastic. I mean, let's be honest. Raise your hand, how many games of Cold War ended in a game over? I'm gonna assume none of you raised your hand at all, and that's fine. Next up, the little environmental cues that zombies have. All across Liberty Falls, there's a chance for zombies to be feasting on a corpse, there's zombies trapped in cars, crushed by debris, and even playing dead like in the cemetery. It's these little things that add flair to the environment and make the world feel more alive. And while I already mentioned this previously, this is also helped by the variety of zombie models that build up the vibe of Liberty Falls. And you know what, since we're on the topic of reiterating previous points, just gonna mention Blanchard again. His demeanor, and especially that fucking 1,000-yard stare he's giving in his radio portrait, are genuinely endearing, and I can completely understand why the zombies community has rallied behind this little guy. On the topic of flair, the new ray gun animations are just absolutely fantastic. It's amazing that we've had the same inspect for it since Black Ops 4 Blackout, and I'm just so glad that there's finally something new. And you know what? Since we're talking about the ray gun, I just want to add the fact that there's Easter egg rewards now. Both Liberty Falls and Terminus feature distinct rewards for beating the Easter eggs in their entirety. For Liberty Falls, it's a ray gun skin, and for Terminus, it's a Maya character skin. Finally, after years of clamoring, we have Easter egg rewards, and it feels so good. I just can't believe that they finally did it. The last gameplay aspect to mention is the SAM trials. And while I already praised its inclusion in the game and helping pace and being way more rewarding, I want to focus on how it overhauls the trial system in general. In Black Ops 4 and Cold War, there were many trials that you could be earning progress towards the whole time and only move up like a tier. With SAM trials emphasizing teamwork, it means that you are never gonna get stuck on rare reward for 3 trials in a row. And the real cherry on top, as I mentioned earlier, the SAM AI is voiced by Julie Nathanson, and her delivery of some of these lines are priceless.
I anticipate seeing joy on your faces when you claim your reward. Please smile for the camera.
Moving on to some quality of life updates, for the first time in Zombies history, the Zombies HUD is completely customizable. There's a number of presets, and within those presets you can edit the opacity and colors of certain aspects, including the medals, score feed, health bars, radar, and weapon stats as well. This means that while I usually like to play with the default HUD, other players can choose to use things like the BO3 Legacy HUD, or completely turn it off, and all of us can be happy. On top of being able to customize the HUD, solo zombie players are now able to save and quit a match so they can pick it up at a later date. Since we've transitioned from peer-to-peer to dedicated servers, it's a shame that we lost server pause, but the save and quit feature is definitely a nice step for solo players. In a progression-based change, in co-op matches, players can contribute to doors, again emphasizing teamwork, or giving one player the chance to artificially inflate their door buy statistic. Turning now to smaller features, there's now a vote required to enter the final encounter in both this map and Terminus, meaning there's no more dragging your team into the boss fight before everyone is ready. Within the pause menu of Black Ops 6, there are 2 options, one to switch to third person, and another to change your field upgrade mid-match. And while neither of these are new, they've been improved to be seamless in Black Ops 6 in a way that they weren't previously. And finally, to close off this section, I'd be an idiot to not mention the music for this map. In a combined effort between Kevin Sherwood, Brian Toohey, and the entire Treyarch sound team, fantastic music in Zombies is back. Whether it's our new Easter egg song, Destroy Something Beautiful, sung by Christina Scabia, or the mysteriously haunting Panos' Lament, the music is exactly what we have come to expect from these maps in building atmosphere and aura, as the kids like to say. Now comes the time to discuss what doesn't work for this map, and while most of it is small things, some of these add up to bring the experience down. Starting with this map's simplicity. And you may be thinking to yourself, wait, Sam, weren't you just saying that simplicity was good? And yes, I was actually. However, there comes a point where simplicity comes at the expense of overall enjoyment. While the Easter egg is fun, I don't feel the draw to replay it. I mainly just build the jet gun and kind of stop there. I completely understand that this experience is fully meant to cater to casual players, and I don't hate it for that. In fact, this strategy of having one map that's harder and one that's easier is actually quintessential Zombies in my opinion, but that doesn't change its lack of allure for a player like myself. Also, there's a big lack of Janice's influence to the entire map. Most of what is described takes place off-screen, and we're kind of just left with a town that's been fucked over without any of the bits that fucked it over. This leads me to probably my biggest flaw in the map, the sheer lack of cohesion between its intro, the overall story, and outro cutscene. When the intro was released in August, there were many theories that we'd finally be able to see the crown jewel of Project Janice's work over the last fictional 6 years. But when we got our hands on the new map, we were just left with a town and a lot of talk about Richthofen, but he's nowhere to be seen and hardly even referenced besides one piece of dialogue that Blanchard has after building the LTG. Also, the outro is just kind of abrupt. Here, Panos tricks us into an arguably predictable twist, and then runs off with no clue on what's going to happen to him or what his plans are. To top that off, Treyarch also alluded to the fact that our strike team in this map was not actually working for Janice despite Blanchard thinking that was the case, and ultimately that meant nothing to the overall story. Now, These points that I'm making could age horribly given how the content cycle goes, but as it stands in November 2024, the cohesion between Richtofen's ultimate goal, Panos' objectives, and the main plot of Black Ops 6 Zombies remains to be seen. Moving on, and this is more directed to the community rather than the map itself, the bitching and vitriol that made Treyarch change the visuals. When we saw the gameplay of Liberty Falls at COD Next, much of the criticism was directed towards the visuals, people complaining that on a sunny day, the sun was out. Yep, that's it. And there were genuine reasons to be concerned, seeing as there was a lack of Dark Ether influence in the town, but the community just took it way too far, to the point of saying that the entire game was a wash, despite just praising it weeks earlier from the Terminus early look. The point of the map was that the outbreak had just started, so it makes decent enough sense that the town wouldn't be fully corrupted. Regardless, Treyarch set out to change it, and when the map launched in October, the visuals were completely washed out. The sky was grayed out to make it moodier, and in my opinion, makes the map kind of look worse than the COD Next build. If you ask me, the solution here would have been to change the skybox. If you go into the church and then stand in the portal and look out to the town, you can see that the skybox of the Dark Ether in the church is applied to the whole map, and honestly, why didn't they just do that? It immediately would have made the map stand out, and we'd have been saved from the washed out gray tone that inhabits the map now. While this next point isn't specific to Liberty Falls, it's time to finally talk about balance. You see, these games more recently have been invested in balancing the player in competition with the zombies. This includes nerfing/buffing certain guns and changing up enemy variety. Now, when I talked about this previously, I mentioned all the enemies except two. The Russian Mangler, and...
This is fucking bullshit, okay? These fucking assholes, these fucking assholes! The fuck is their problem, man?
Heavy armored zombies take 10 years off of my life. Heavy armored zombies fucked my wife. Heavy armored zombies are everything that's wrong with this country, rolled into one piece of shit enemy type. Everything about this game is oriented to dealing as much damage as possible, and here comes this fucking guy just ready to gobble up as much of your ammo as possible in a game where the ammo economy is not as strong due to the lack of Mule Kick's abilities like in Cold War. And turning to the Mangler, they aren't a problem in the early game because there can only be a couple of them, and they actually kind of disappear for a few rounds after they're first introduced on round 11. But once you hit round 31, oh boy, you better clench your cheeks because the spawn cap of Manglers is completely lifted, and you can have upwards of 6 club-armed, long-range armored bastards charging at you and shooting in a firing line formation. This is some serious levels of the whistling from World War II pre-patch issues. It is manageable to an extent if you're decent enough at zombies and training, but this is arguably the most punishing aspect of the game. If you get caught in front of a train of Manglers you have, good luck dodging all of them when they synchronize and shoot, which, combined with the lack of armor drops in the high rounds, means that you're almost guaranteed to go down. And so, we've reached the end of my Liberty Falls review. I came into this map not really sure how to feel, but now that we've had it for a month, I can't help but enjoy my time with it. Terminus can be a lot, so to have a map to throw on with my buddies and piss around for an hour is fantastic. Honestly, how lovely is it to have good zombies again? It's kind of crazy how simple it really can be, and I'm glad to put that funky shit behind us. Thankfully, this is just one half of Black Ops 6's launch offering, and not just that, our next adventure is just around the corner with Citadel des Morts releasing in just a week. As always, I want to thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed listening to me yap about this map. I simply can't wait to come back and do it again soon. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.
Come here, I'm gonna eat you! I'm bigger than you, I'm higher in the food chain! Get in my belly!